So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Sheila Fogarty kind of dismantling Yvette Cooper over their NHS plans.
To know how before they give you their vote. So how is all of that going to be achieved?
So here's, for example, for our NHS, it means using the money from closing the loopholes on the non-DOMS taxation, which means that you have people who are registering to pay tax abroad and who actually earning a lot of money here in the UK, to say they should be fairly paying tax. We would close those loopholes and put that money into our National Health Service.
Remind me again how much,
because in the short term,
as to how much that would raise.
So, Cooper's point here about closing non-DOMS tax is fine. This is something Ed Miliband wanted to do in 2015, to be fair. So, this one's an ongoing thing for Labour. It's kind of moved about. And I think it's fine policy. And I think, saying we're going to use this to fund this, I think that's fine. But there is argument of they'll just leave. But then again, if they're not paying proper tax anyways, who cares at that point? Like how much to the economy is someone like what was Rishi Sunak's wife bringing when she was classed as a non-dom? That's one of the questions I'd ask the audience.
Yeah, and in the short term, without putting that money into the extra overtime sessions for doctors and nurses to be able to do the weekend sessions, evening sessions, in order to cut waiting time. So it's around 40,000 additional appointments a week, and that would help bring our NHS waiting list down. So that is...
And this in theory is really good. But you have, staff that are burnt out already. And this is something they've talked about on Question Time, where you've had, medical professionals come out and say, look, we don't have the staff to do these additional appointments. We're already cooked as is. And then Wes Streeton come out and said, well, look, at my local hospital, they're already doing overtime. And so the medical professional come back and said, well, yeah, it's because they don't get paid enough. Have you wondered why they're doing it? And I think that's a good point of some of these, professionals who would live in major cities, not getting paid enough at all, really putting themselves through the ringer. That's why you have one of the reasons why you have so many of them leaving. Do you want to put them in a position where they want to do, they're incentivized to do a lot more overtime and, essentially, putting themselves in more trouble of making mistakes, not because they're bad at their job or, things like that. It's because they're burnt out. And, there's only so many hours you can do as a human being during the week. It really is. And that job is not easy. Being a medical professional, I can't imagine how hard it is. And so I think what Labour's plan, in theory, is good, but they're being pulled up on it quite by medical professionals, like people actually in the industry. And that's one of the issues I think they're going to keep running into in the election. And if they face tougher questioning and put these policies out way before the election and got called out on it and realised, okay, maybe this is not the right way to go about things, they'd be in a much better position now, in my opinion.
I think a practical
Cooper,
plan.
They're all knackered. They're all knackered from the pandemic, from the pressures that the NHS has been. I'm not blaming you for it, but they are. That's the reality of it. Too few of them have the right numbers of colleagues. It's going to be interesting to say the solution is you work harder.
That's why you have to pay the full overtime rate.
Your colleague Rachel reads the shadow.
But this is the point. You can incentivise them, with more money, which again, at least they're getting paid properly, which is important. But at the same time, you're going to incentivise people to go into burnout more. Like their base rate should be improved, and the answer is more staffing. And that's why, despite the fact that Labour keeps not saying it, is we should avoid, red list countries, but we should look at bringing in more healthcare workers from abroad. That's what we should be doing short term, definitely short term. 100%, and then look at training more people, bring back bursaries and things like that, make it more incentivized, but also increase the base pay of healthcare workers to make it so they don't have to, that it's not some sort of calling where they do this because, this is what they were born to do. Like, it's a job at the end of the day. Like, they need to get paid properly, and they have lives at the end of the day as well. You're going to put them in a position where they're going to miss more of their social lives when, healthcare professionals, they do unsociable hours anyways. It's part of the job. So, it's just not good at all.
The Chancellor has been at pains most weeks, if not most days, to say, I can't dish out the sweets.
Yeah, this is honestly the framing here, I can't dish out the sweeties. I hate it. I hate it because at the end of the day, like, we're not talking about a bunch of kids here. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about serious stuff. And yeah, I post memes and jokes and the soundboard all the time, but I wouldn't phrase the economy as we can't dish out the sweets. I just wouldn't do that. It's just, it kind of demeans it.
we have to be very fiscally responsible. I mean, that's just one example of where, with the best will in the world and the best sounding solutions and policies in the world, when reality meets your policies, it's going to bite, isn't it? And possibly even stop them in their tracks.
Well, I'd say two things in response to that. First of all, I think actually just having a government, just a fresh start for the country, to set a different course, as opposed to all of this chaos.
This is one of the most garbage arguments I've ever heard in my life. Oh, just having change will be enough. Like, that's dumb. Especially when, like, the Labour Party as well, under New Labour, did go to war with unions. I didn't know this until recently. They did have a war with the fire unions, and there were major problems. So the idea that the Labour wouldn't go to get into a fight with the BMA is not out of the question. But the idea that a change will solve everything is complete nonsense. Especially when you've got your junior doctors striking over wages. What are Labour going to do? Not increase their wages and cause another fight with them? They're going to argue about fiscal rules. What's the plan here? Because we're seeing ongoing strikes, and the question is, how would Labour alleviate those strikes?
With to have a Labour Health Secretary who actually wants to work with the NHS, who wants to work.
That's why he's constantly attacking the NHS, West Streeting, constantly talking about privatisation and attacking the NHS, talking about reform, etc. That's not even true. I'm not going to say he's like Matt Hancock or like Jeremy Hunt, but he's not a million miles away from them. Let's be honest.
With staff across the NHS who wants to get the changes in place that we need rather than picking fights, which is what we have.
It's literally what he does. This is why he's getting ratioed. He gets ratioed on Twitter by healthcare professionals because he's picking fights with them constantly because of his dumb policies. This is a garbage argument. I'm sorry.
Seen for too long from
but that doesn't create money.
They've really not got a grip. So
that's true. That's the answer right there. Regardless of whatever they're saying here, it's gonna take money. And Rachel Reeves has said, we're not going to do that. The best that they'll get is increase in overtime pay. That's it. So, it is going to come down to money at the end of the day. So I genuinely just baffled.
You're right that there is also an issue about making sure everything we say has been fully funded. It is why we have said on both health and education, we've identified areas where we can have additional funding going into those areas. But look, in the end, you've got to get the economy growing.
Here we go. We result back to get the economy growing in order to do everything else, even though, to grow the economy, we need investment, we need borrowing. That's how you get the economy growing. It doesn't... It's endlessly frustrating. It feels like I can play this GIF on repeat because we're just walking in a loop because this lot keep defaulting back to their same basic NPC answers, and it's driving me nuts. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.